In this video, we're going to have a look at textures in Unity. So a texture is essentially an image file that you're going to use to sort of wrap the objects in your scene. Now, most objects that you see in Unity will actually have some kind of a texture applied to them, but you can't apply a texture directly to an object. You have to actually use something called a material, which will get covered in a little bit more detail in another video. But essentially, each object has a material which gives it the sort of look that it's going to have. And one of the properties of the material is that you can attach a texture to it. Now, this might sound a little bit kind of abstract at the moment. Don't worry, we're going to go through it and it'll make a lot more sense. So let's take a look at the ground here. I'm going to select the object of the ground and I'll show you that it currently has a material attached to it. So we've got the inspector properties here for the object we have selected, which is the ground. And if we go down to the mesh renderer, we can see that in materials, it actually has this ground material attached to it at the moment. And that's got a bunch of properties to it, which we can change. We can change the color of it. There's a number of different things that we can affect on there. But I'm going to show you how to create your own one. So if we click on this create button and we go down to material, we have a new material. We can just leave it being called new material, or what do we call it? We'll call it grass, because we're going to make it look like grass. So now we have this grass material, and I'm going to assign that to the ground by just simply dragging it onto the object. So you can see that as I drag it onto various places in the scene, it can show you what it would look like. For now, we're just going to go for the ground. So I'll drop that on there, and now our ground no longer has the ground material, it now has our grass material. But it doesn't look very grassy at the moment, so we're going to change that by importing a texture. So a texture is just simply an image file that we're going to use. I found this one online. It's just a very simple JPEG file of some grass. So let's get it into Unity by just dragging it into the project window. You can see we now have it there. I'm going to select our grass material, and I'm just going to assign this texture to the material by dragging it over to this albedo property here. And when I drop it on there, we'll see that we actually get some, didn't go, try it again. There we go. Now we have some grass on the floor. Now, while it's nice to have our grass texture there, it's not quite looking right yet. If we look in the game window, we can actually see that it's all kind of blurry. The reason for this is that it has stretched that texture over this whole area here. So what we want to do is we want to actually just shrink the texture down a little bit so that it looks a bit better. And we can do that with something called tiling. So down here in the inspector properties for our grass material, there is this property called tiling here. And as we change that, you'll see that it actually shrinks or stretches our texture. I'm going to set that at about 10. And now we can see that the texture is being repeated 10 times on the object here. I'm going to change the Y to 10 as well. And now that looks a bit better here in the game window. Now the other thing that we can do is we can change the offset. And that allows us to adjust the position of the tiling. of the texture. I'm going to change our tiling back down to sort of 5, just so we can see a little bit more clearly the positioning changing. So we've got this offset property here, and as I move it, we can actually just see that the texture is moving along. Now for the grass, it is a tileable texture, which means that the edges of it are sort of seamless, and it'll repeat easily without having any break there. But a lot of the time you'll have a texture that'll be for a specific object, and so it might not look quite right in its original positioning, and that's where this offset becomes really, really useful in being able to kind of position your textures just right.